Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. I'll start by saying Happy New Year and Happy New Moon. We are in this Capricorn new moon time, and I'm just here, a few moments before the moon perfects. Um, I'll start by just saying what a new moon is, in case, some of you are new to astrology. In the lunar cycle and in the evolutionary astrology, there's kind of even two parts to the new moon itself. It's a conjunction of the sun and the moon when they come together. And for me, there is the dark time of the moon, which I consider this balsamic phase. It's as the moon is applying to the sun. And so when they do that, of course, in the sky, it's there, the moon is not visible versus in a full moon where the moon and the sun are in opposition to one another, the moon is very visible because it's receiving the full light of the sun from its opposition. In a new moon, the moon is practically invisible. It's not, you can't see, and that is very reflective of what this time brings. It's the darkness, it's the seed time. Anytime something is in a seed form or in a new state, it's nearly invisible to the naked eye. And here we are right now. This is the balsamic time. It's when the moon is applying to the sun. And that particular time, Jeffrey Wolf Green, he talks about um, the completion of the evolutionary cycle, right? So, what he says here, the individual will never again experience those functions in the way that they were previously experienced. A totally new evolutionary cycle is about to begin. This um, tends to, it tends to initiate a sense of confusion, of uncertainty, maybe even a lack of clarity. There can be a sense of disillusionment that's happening in this phase because something is being blacked out, basically. Our emotional body, which is represented by the moon, is almost not, you know, not seen in a way that we might feel in the full moon phase, that heightened sense of emotions. And it's interesting, to me because I clearly can find that in this time it's quite easy to be dissociated from the emotional body. It's quite easy to feel like with the holidays and overwhelm and so much to do that I can't quite um, locate how I'm feeling or what I'm feeling or where I am in my life because it's not, one, it's not clear what's happening next, right? In this dark time of the moon, it's not clear what is going to grow. We just know an evolutionary cycle is being completed. And then, um, you know, maybe there's something that we're able to grasp or something that we're able to learn from this particular time. It's kind of like the hermit in the darkness. We can kind of look. And it's really interesting to me that this new moon is occurring on the last few days of this year, right? It's December 30th. Um, this is a great time to be really sitting and looking, sitting within ourselves and looking and saying, what has happened? What has happened this year? And not just like what's physically happened in our reality, because maybe there are things that have changed in our physical reality, but what has restructured within my emotional body? What has changed within my um, consciousness? What has changed in the way that I think and feel about my life? What has changed in my relationships? And for those of us where we're coming to the end of this year and there's clearly things that have not changed in our relationships or have not changed in our body, that have not changed in our lives, that we feel a sense of dissatisfaction or disappointment or disillusionment with, or we might feel so like an apathy of the heart, I've been thinking a lot about like how it feels when one is in love or one feels really like swept away in love or joy or excitement, and then how it feels when the absence of that has been um, missing from our lives for quite some time. It can be a really challenging state to come out of, right? It's akin to depression, but it's not quite depression. It's just, many of us can be creatures of habit. We can be, especially Capricorn. Capricorn is a creature of habit. It wants to build habits and structures. It has goals that it wants to set. Capricorn, is notorious for being a leader because they can take on quite a lot of responsibility. And in having so much responsibility, they can be lacking in having feeling or emotion or passion, or it can actually feel as though the burdens become so great that the capacity for joy, the capacity for excitement, the capacity for uh, a different way of feeling about one's life might be absent. And then here we come to the end of this year, right? And we've got so much evolutionary completion energy happening, right? We completed with Pluto in Capricorn, where, we have all these planets that are moving balsamic to Saturn, balsamic to Neptune, balsamic to the nodes. We're moving towards a very distinct closure of a particular reality. And if you want to know more about how that breaks down in the year ahead, I did a transits of 2025 video, and I talked a bit about this significant evolutionary shift that we're about to undergo in the next few months here, especially between, I would say, mid-January to mid-April. Profound, significant. Like the eclipse season of March is, you know, that's like the culmination. That's like the full moon of it, but it's really happening between January 11th and uh, April 20th. So that particular window of time is really potent for change. And it's inviting us into a completely new experience of life. And yet we're kind of in this dark time right now, which for most of us, in at least in the Northern Hemisphere, it is a dark time. It's winter, I look outside, the leaves are all over the ground, everything is dark, it's raining a lot, it gets dark at like 4 o'clock. There uh isn't like a lot of energy for movement, for change. The energy is really for settling, for going in, for being inside, being inward. And that is also what prepares us for the coming of the new, right? And the new phase, at least in the lunar cycle, happens very quickly after, right? In the next day here, we will be in a new phase. And the new phase correlates to a brand new evolutionary intention. That new intention and its requirements have this fundamental bottom line of a desire to break free from the past. So this is really good energy for the end of the year in terms of looking, like I know everyone says either they do or don't make New Year's resolutions. They do or don't set goals for the new year, right? But if I were wanting to do that, if I were really, and I am doing that tomorrow, I'll be doing a new moon ceremony. Um, I have decided to open up my new moon ceremony to my entire community. So if you would like to join me, there's a link in the description to this video. You can RSVP for the Zoom link. You can join me. I will do a transmission on the new moon and we'll do some prayer and practice and we'll set intentions for the year ahead. And this is a really beautiful way to ground, of course, what we desire and what we're really wanting to desire, right, is to break free from the past cycle so that there can be a new experience and new awareness. And at the same time, what happens in this phase is that there can be a real fear of getting sucked into the past. This has to be met with a period of self-discovery in order for that new phase to take root. So we have to begin the year actually saying, okay, I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to learn about my desires. I'm going to learn about what's needed in order for me to break free from the past. And you could look at anything. It's been really interesting to me to observe in this last week because I've felt my mind take a lot of time. I've just noticed, I've caught myself several times where my mind is spending a lot of time ruminating on the past. It's, whether it's a memory that comes up that just kind of like reminds me of something, and all of a sudden I feel resentful, I feel contracted, you know, whether it's something that I've been desiring for myself to happen in the future that's not been happening, that all of a sudden I'm back in the relationship pattern with the same resistance. I'm like, how is that even there? I really thought and I received this beautiful download, this beautiful message from Spirit during my ceremony the other day. And then I share that. And of course, it brings up the same core story and the same content that I've suffered on for the last 4 years. And I'm like, how is that still there? What do I need to do? Right. And it's so funny because the guidance came through in response to me asking the question, like, what do I need to do to break through this in order to have a different experience? What's blocking me from receiving what I desire? How do I move through that? And then, of course, the very message that I received elicited the very resistance that I have been coming face to face with. And of course, when we come face to face with resistance in another, that impacts our own evolution, but the other person is unwilling to face that resistance with us, there's not much that you can do. You can't really change other people. That's an illusion. And that can be that can bring up that same disillusionment because it's like, well, okay, I got the same response, I got the same resistance. How do I change my response? Oh, how do I reformulate this uh you know so that I get to experience something different, right? And to me, with Capricorn, we're talking about the ground of our very physical survival, the structures of our reality, right? These are things that impact us. And what we are learning in Capricorn, of course, is how we can become more emotionally self-responsible. We're learning how we can hold ourselves, how we can grow, spiritually. And spiritual growth doesn't just happen in the good feelings that it doesn't happen. Spiritual growth rarely happens in those moments when we're feeling blissful, content, happy, you know. Spiritual growth happens in those moments when we are lost, when we're in darkness, when we are disillusioned with our lives, with the world, with when we feel apathy in our heart towards what we once loved, when we feel resentment and hurt and woundedness that is, leaving us in a place where we feel lost, unable to be empowered to make our own decisions, unable to move, unable to change, unable to do anything. And yet, that is where real spiritual growth comes in. That is where our pain has purpose. Our pain has purpose. And that purpose, whether it's ultimately the development of a new evolutionary phase of our life, um, it becomes conscious as we grow. As we grow through that pain, it becomes like a muscle that gets developed. And, what we're cultivating right now, especially with this Mars opposite Pluto, right? We're cultivating the muscle of self-expression. We're cultivating the muscle of the heart. The muscle of the heart actually is one of the very first things that's formed in the womb. When a baby is created, when life and the consciousness, that soul that became you, before anything could be detected, your heartbeat was detectable. Before any aspect of your consciousness came into the world, took a breath, had a life, your heartbeat was present. And it was present inside the darkness of your mother, right? And whatever your relationship to your mother is, of course, like this is one of the big things that we can work on in our evolutionary journey. The moon relates to the mother. The moon in Capricorn, right? Disconnected mother, authoritarian mother, a mother that has to maintain so much control that she becomes tight and hard and critical, right? Whatever that is for us, in order for us to relax that, in order for our sense of being to really be able to grow, we have to be able to feel. We have to be able to feel our emotional body. We have to be able to feel the parts that have become tight, the parts of the heart that have become tight because they've forgotten what it's like to be loved. The parts, oh, now it's going to make me cry. The parts of the heart that have become tight because it has forgotten what it feels like to express joy. These are the things that we have to remember in the darkness, right? And that can come through the simple grace. When there's been loss, when there's been challenge. I recently, have just seen how many people really suffered and struggled in this year. Not only myself, you know, um, accidents, injuries, babies lost, marriages ended, divorces that were challenging, homes lost, jobs lost, parents lost, suicides, and all kinds of really hard stuff. And I've witnessed and continue to pray for people in my life, in my community, around me who have really had to go through so much just to make it through this year. And those who have chosen to cope through solitude, through aloneness, I've really made it through in many ways through painting, through prayer. Um, we come to the end of this year maybe a little tired in the heart, maybe a little unsure that it's worth struggling for more next year, right? How do you set goals when you're not even sure that you can get your heart to go in that direction? You do it by feeling, right? Of course, feeling the pain, feeling the weight, feeling the emotions. That's what allows us to continue to grow. And this is not always easy to do, you know? This particular time of year can also bring a deep sense of aloneness. And one of the messages that I received is that you are never alone. You don't do this alone, and that it's necessary for us to remember that and take that attitude that this is a together journey. So when in this week ahead, as we begin the new year, and of course, as this is a time of having a sense of darkness accompany a sense of maybe a deep desire for more love, more joy, more support, more resources, more strength, more capacity, more health, more well-being, more buoyancy in our hearts. We can understand that the way that it comes is through this emergence of consciousness, right? That's how the cycles develop. We move right with the moon on January 1st, conjunct Pluto. The moon will be um, opposite Mars, and then the moon is going to make a conjunction the very next day to Venus at 29 degrees of Aquarius. So Venus is wrapping up a cycle in Aquarius this week, which is also another evolutionary journey because the Venus in Aquarius, uh, you know, is very different from the Venus in Pisces. In my class series, Love Evolution, I go through all Venus, through all the different houses, through all the different signs. Um, and we're starting a new round in this year with Love Evolution, practicing with Venus. We'll be working with her in the sign of Pisces, which is one of the most significant signs in this year ahead. We're going to have a lot of Piscean energy, a lot of oceanic movement. I talked a lot about that in the year ahead video. Um, but I'll just read to you also a little bit about Venus in Pisces from an evolutionary intention perspective. Um, because Venus in Aquarius is about rebelling, from those social structures, the status quo, um, liberating from common value systems. It's very much the alt edge way of life. And it's critical to understand that that is what then brings us in to the Venus and Pisces nature. So the Venus and Pisces person is learning to embrace that which is archetypal, that which creates a sense of ultimate meaning, right? We go from rebelling against value systems, community, authority, whatever it is, the status quo. When we, it's like when you decide, I'm going to just be weird, I'm just going to be outside of the fringe because belonging to Capricorn, belonging to the system doesn't really work for me anymore. I meet many people, and I'm one of these people where it's like we worked in the corporate world, right? I worked in corporate banking, I worked in corporate finance, I worked in high net worth investment. I was a financial planner I was in this industry for over a decade and a half. And that was a way of thinking, it was a way of living, it had its own, value system. And then my desire in that leaving that was to rebel against that. Like, I didn't want to have anything to do with the stock market. I didn't want to have anything to do with the status quo way. I couldn't relate anymore to what people were being advised to do when I saw that that very advice was undermining their health, their well-being, their reality, and not making them any happier. People weren't getting solutions from the solutions provided within that system. And so, like, to live outside of that system, well, what does it take? I explored a lot of different things, gift economy, community, all different ways of seeing life and the world, alternatives, sustainable ways of living and thinking and organizing our reality. And still, that to me hasn't brought me to an answer that solves things for everyone. It just isn't where we are from an evolutionary perspective. But then what's beyond that, right? Ultimate meaning, ultimate reality. And that's Venus and Pisces, right? This is, of course, can be the creative imagination in its most beautiful form. This can be poetry and love and art and music, all these things that come from a divine source where I don't know what inspired that when I just received a song. I don't know what inspires when a painting just comes through the paintbrush. It doesn't have anything to do with me and it's coming through me, right? This is the aspect of Venus and Pisces that is so precious. We can see it unfolding in art and in creativity. And it relates to Neptune and um, to the dream state. And it's really interesting. I've been just tracking my dreams a lot lately and um aware that, dreams can just as easily be nightmares. They can just as easily be illusions, right? There is the dream of true love can become as quickly as it comes in, it can become a nightmare for people when it's not real. There's a lot of healing that has to happen in our consciousness in order for true love to actually mean real love. And real love is unconditional. It doesn't depend on how we're behaving, on what we're doing, on if we're good enough, right? Because there isn't a good enough. There is an inherent holiness and a worthiness and a completeness that exists in unconditional love that places no value on the human being, no value on the circumstance, no value on anything. It just loves. It doesn't have expectations. It doesn't have requirements. It doesn't prerequisite, oh, I'm gonna love you if this, or I'll love you when that, when you do that, when you do this, you know. And in a way, it becomes the ultimate meaning that we can achieve as human beings, the ultimate expression that we can realize in our lifetimes. And in many ways, it comes with a total sense of fulfillment, right? There is fulfillment in real love. I remember I once received a message that said, if you seek only love, you will always receive it. You will always receive it. You will always be fulfilled. If you seek only love, you will always be fulfilled. And I find that to be true. A lot of the times what I'm seeking is not love, and it's some form of conditioning, or it's some form of security. It's some form of an idea that maybe means something to me, and it certainly can have there can be a big evolutionary or even an ego desire that is attached to that. But if you seek only love, it will always be fulfilled. And a part of what we're working with in this new moon, and as we see Venus and the moon both move into that sign of Pisces at pretty much the same time. So they're really moving together, and this happens on Friday. Um, we're seeking a new beginning where we're moving actually towards that greater sense of meaning and purpose that is truly love, right? That is the most powerful form of healing that any of us can receive. It doesn't mean that suffering automatically disappears. It means that we love what is. It doesn't mean that our circumstances all of a sudden resolve themselves or that we find that things have changed. It's just that we change in such a way that we recognize the sacredness of that. I'm noticing too that on that first day that the moon moves into Pisces and Venus makes a trine to Vesta, the goddess of the home and the hearth. She's the goddess of the sacred flame. There's a sacred connection. And then we also have the nodes of the moon that are also at 0 degrees on that same day. And we also have Mars that moves to 0 degrees. So there is some sort of sacred new beginning in true love that is emerging for us. And true love means that the truth of love is present in our reality, while reality may not feel as if it's, you know, totally healed, right? It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be different. And oftentimes, I know for myself, I'm looking for my experience to be different before I feel differently about it. It's just, I want to see something change, and then I'll feel happy about it, and then I'll feel excited about it. I want to see, it's like whether you want to see the person that you've been praying for, the relationship that you've been wanting, the job that you've been wanting, when you want to see that you have the money in the bank and it feels like you're secure. You want to see that you own the house, and then you'll feel good. But none of those things ever really happen and bring us the feeling that we desire. That's the unconditional love that we're seeking can't be found in those things. When they do show up, if we haven't already learned how to feel that way about our lives in the mess and in the chaos and in the destruction and in the disappointment and in the disillusionment and in the grief and in the loss, if we haven't found that love, we won't find it when somebody shows up at our doorstep with flowers. We won't find it when we own a little piece of land and we're planting our flowers in it. We won't find it when we have a physical body that feels strong and healthy. We won't. We just won't, because we won't ever get there. And it doesn't ever resolve the feeling anyways. You can get there. I met plenty of people in my advising days who had a lot more money than me, who had enough to last them a lifetime, who were not happy, right? Having the money doesn't get you the happiness. And so for me, my word for this year is like fulfillment, contentment. I want to know what it feels like to feel fulfilled, to feel content as I am, where I am, with what I have, as the bottom line baseline for living my life, and then let everything else come from that place. And if I don't know what that feels like, which I fortunately had an experience of it in a dream the other day. I received a message in my dream, and I had this like feeling of like, oh, I have enough. And even in my physical reality, I went to a store and I felt like, oh, I have everything I need. There isn't really anything for me to do at this point. Um, so that, that becomes our ground for this year. That becomes the place where we can set our intentions, right? This, if I were to set intentions, of course, I'm going to be doing my new moon ceremony tomorrow. You're welcome to join me. Please feel free to sign up for that and join me for that ceremony. The other time that I might consider doing it is here, actually waiting, I think, until the moon is in some first light, the first few days of the year, waiting until Venus is in Pisces, and then setting uh, setting your imagination free and deciding that you have complete unconditional love of your life as it is. That's just done. That decision is made. And now what? Now what? Now what are you ready to heal? Now what are you ready to love? Now what are you wanting to enter your life? Now what are the core desires of your soul? Now that this is just it. This is it. And looking, in these days at what meaning is being made of your life. What meaning are you making? How are you translating the story that you tell about yourself? The story that you tell about your life? How does that, I remember once when I realized, oh yeah, I've been telling that story over and over again. And I've had it make a certain meaning about me. And I kept repeating that story. Why am I doing that? I don't have to tell that story anymore. Like, you're in a place here at the end of this year, you don't have to tell this story anymore. The moon is new now. It wasn't when I started recording this video. Now it is. We're in the new phase. It's already done. It's already happened. That's how quick things can change in our lives. So, my friends, Happy New Year. Blessings on your year ahead. May this be the most profoundly fulfilling year that you could have, filled with love, filled with joy, filled with creative expression, filled with spirit guiding you, loving you, holding you, healing you, carrying you where you are meant to go, filled with a sense of meaning and purpose, an understanding of your life that allows you to feel at peace, allows you to feel a sense of hope and faith and optimism for everything as it goes and as it comes. And may you know yourself as that love. May you know yourself more deeply than ever before. May this year bring you more closely into that love and connection that you desire, and to whatever you desire for yourself, for your family, for your community, for the world. And may love be at the center of that. So, my friends, if there's anything in this message that touched your heart, please feel free to leave it for me in the comments below. I love hearing from you. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Join me in my new moon ceremony if you feel called. Join me in one of my classes this year, and we will begin with our live chart practice in January. So this is a great time to sign up for a class with me and get to study one-on-one really closely in a small group environment, looking at your chart with me. And I I'm giving a discount until the end of the day tomorrow. Using the coupon code year end, you can take $100 off any one of my classes. All the details are on my website. So if you have any questions, email me. Um, I hope to see you very soon, my friends. So much love and bye for now.